right. Going live in 3, 2, 1, and we are now officially live. I hope I'm showing up on the camera. Let me fix this polo, the weird crinkly collar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a Sunday edition of Weather Center Live. It is 8:15 p.m. Had a few additional extracurricular activities I wanted to sort out before jumping on here. Let me change the image here. I was doing a little bit of last-second forecasting. I'm going to take you through everything I've been looking at and why it is that I do believe that certain things could possibly change tomorrow, especially based off of what I've been seeing over the last 48 to 60 hours and in comparison to what Storm Prediction Center has on their charts. They're slowly catching up, and I do like the fact that they have more or less divided our areas of enhanced severe weather activity, at least for our day 2 tomorrow. Today was definitely a struggle for some people. Some folks were definitely not counting on all that activity to suddenly spark up for parts of Pennsylvania. But if you guys watched my TikTok spiel yesterday, lines up excellent. That's why I have the water vapor satellite shot here for 2 reasons. Number one, we're going to look at what caused this severe weather activity in Pennsylvania. It was pretty intense, too. Pennsylvania definitely got lit up today. And there were a lot of folks who really didn't think it was going to happen. And then the folks who jumped on the bandwagon last second were like, tornado threat, and it's like, oh my gosh, you guys, you don't really pay attention to what's actually happening, do you? You just like to jump on and randomly blast out tornadoes this and tornadoes that, and it's a struggle. And I'm already going to go ahead and say it right now because I know that this live stream is probably going to be a very intimate group of us. There's not going to be a lot of folks tuning in, so I'm going to professionally go on a rampage here. I'm very, 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 very sick and tired of every other big weather source on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you are. As soon as severe weather ignites, it's not even a matter of this, or that. It's, oh, there's a storm, tornadoes. Oh, it's raining in your area, tornadoes. Oh, there's the spark of lightning, we got to go live, tornadoes. Like, calm down. Stop being so trigger happy. There was no real tornado threat today. Even though Storm Prediction Center had the 5 percentile highlighted on their charts, there was really no threat for tornadoes, and I'm almost 110% positive if I pull up the opening here. I'm going to open up my radar Omega right now, and let's see. Nah, we still have severe thunderstorms popping off out there. And if you guys watched my TikTok update, for those of you who can follow me on that platform, check this screaming feature out right here. That's exactly how I put it. I kind of channeled my inner Reed Timmer in my TikTok update yesterday. We had this Clipper-style system that just ripped across the international border of Canada and the United States, and as soon as it pile drived right into all this warm advection that's coming across the Great Plains and the Great Lakes, that's your point of contention right there. It makes a lot of sense. But wasn't a substantial tornado threat. I definitely was not seeing it. Definitely wasn't there. And it's also in a very weird source region, too, because if you guys look, the component with this is irregular. It's very erroneous. You have stuff coming in out of the west, then you have stuff coming in out of the northwest, and it kind of just collided like so. Little, I guess we can call it like a fender bender, for lack of better atmospheric terminology. But here comes this guy. This is going to be our next major weather player, and we're really going to dissect this because I'm noticing that Storm Prediction Center, I'm glad they backed off with it too. I'm very glad that they backed. I mean, they really didn't, but, and I'm not saying we're going to back off on the threat, but I'm thankful that they're splitting up areas. Because truthfully, if I were at the helm of drawing those charts, I'd probably get a little more into the weeds than they'd probably allow me to. But I'm picking up what they're putting down, and I like it. That broad-brushed area of level 2, level 3 was not going to cut it. And I'll show you exactly why. But one piece of the puzzle is going to be this upper low that was spinning across the west coast for a while, giving California another bit of an atmospheric river type setup, really good cross barrier flow over the Sierra Nevadas, excellent diffluence up over the Pacific Northwest, the Great Basin, the Intermountain West. You can still see that cross barrier flow occurring along the northern and middle Rockies. And that's what that's your supportive jet axes right there. Now, the reason I bring this up is we want to track exactly where this perturbation wanders, because I'm seeing two separate vortices. There's one here and there's one here, and this is the one that's going to move further to the north. And there's going to be 3 triggers out there that we need to pay close attention to. That first one to the north is going to be pivotal. That second one down to the south is probably going to more or less wash out. We're not going to have too much of a really significant surface feature as it moves over the southern periphery of the Rocky Mountains there, the desert southwest. It's going to lose a lot of its lustern because that's just not a favorable source region right now, at least not until we get that southwest monsoon to kick up. Then we'll have a bit more of those favorable ingredients to keep those things alive if they wander through, because we're also going to have that recession in our jet stream. But I bring that up because it's going to help to intensify our dry line down in through here, which is where I think is going to be number 2. We have number 1 here, we have number 2, and then there's a lot of activity that I'm actually counting on to go down through here. More isolated in nature. It's not going to be widespread to where there's going to be a major severe weather outbreak along that west to east angle. But if we switch on over to WPC's chart, and by the way, folks, I apologize for the lack of formalities. We'll say hello to everybody in a second. If we switch over to Weather Prediction Center's charts right here, I'm going to go to 12Z tomorrow morning. This is 8 a.m. as we start the day. And check this out. Here is our mature system and our occluded front, the triple point. This is kicker 1. There's our dry line, kicker 2. And then this stable/unstable wave right here is kicker number 3. And if we look at the surface theta E here in a second, my favorite, I swear, when this page gets a little bit bigger, I'm going to make a shirt that says, check the theta E, I promise, hashtag theta E, or something like that. Because this, and I'm going to work in my second catchphrase, that boundary there, as it sinks to the south, is going to give it a muff of a nudge. There it is. We're giving it a little nudge to kick off some very, very isolated bouts of rather significant thunderstorm activity. So those are my 3 areas. If it were up to me, I would not do what Storm Prediction Center has. Storm Prediction Center has day 1 like this, and then day 2 like this, with a little bit of this. No. I would just wholeheartedly, if I were drawing their charts, I'd go boom, like my thumbnail implies, boom, like my thumbnail implies, and then I would go ahead and draw a little thin wispy band right through there. And I know that's very meso, if not micro scale in my predictions, and we'll probably get a little bit of sporadic coverage outside of these general areas. But, you know, those are just my thoughts, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Let's go into the chat. I see the chat is popping off. Glendale Railfan, French toast. That is a mouthful. Ohio for next week. Do you mean this upcoming week as in tomorrow, or technically today? Or do you mean the following week? Because we'll get into that towards the very tail end of the stream. We're not going to extrapolate that far out just yet. Braden's WC, welcome in. Scrooge McDuck, we are indeed live. Good evening. Joseph Parton. Melinda, howdy from Mobile, Alabama. Thank you very much for joining us. Kevin Rivera, happy Sunday. David, have a blessed day. It has been a phenomenal day. Church service was powerful as always this morning, which started the day on a rather high note, was phenomenal. Alfalfa Bill Enjoyer, welcome in. Christina's 100. Got to keep it 100 in here. Judy Tokos, hello there. Thea Elba, thank you very much for joining us from Puerto Rico. It's a pleasure to have you in the chat tonight. Michelle Cameron, it's going to be bad. It's going to be rough. Let's put it that way. It's going to be rough, but it's not going to be bad. And we got to keep those kind of verbs or that verbiage out of the open air, because there's a lot of folks out there who are kind of panicking about outbreak. And I think the common misconception or the common theme here is, especially with the Storm Prediction Center drawing such huge, expansive areas of severe thunderstorms, that kind of communicates to the average viewer that everywhere in that yellow, green, red, purple, blue, and I'm being silly, everywhere in there is going to get badly hit by a thunderstorm or a tornado, and that's not the case. What they're highlighting is, and unfortunately they can only get so narrowed in their predictions, is where it is likely to be the greatest initiation of that thunderstorm coverage. How expansive, how scattered, how widespread, how isolated it is remains to be seen. That's the difficult part of any severe weather or tropical forecast for that matter. Those finite variables that we won't know of until we're minutes away from a potential impact or a development. That remains to be seen, but we'll talk you through it, and we'll give you my thoughts here in the Weather Center. A lot of yes, Kevin, I actually will talk about that a little bit as well. There's a bit of a weak kink out there. Some people are calling it a tropical wave. I don't know if I'd call it a tropical wave just yet. We don't have our easterly jet firing just yet. We don't have any offshore flow from the African peninsula or the Horn of Africa. So I don't know if it's a bona fide tropical wave, but there is a little bit of a feature in the pattern out there that I have been watching run to run on our Euro, GFS, etc. Reefs and One-Ways, Dania Beach, Florida, welcome in. Michelle Cameron, we have a lot of wind down in East Tennessee. That makes sense because you've got the two areas of air masses trying to collide with one another. You have our bona fide polar air to the north that's trying to sink south, and then we have this residual high pressure that's still stirring stuff up over the south and east and off the west coast, or I should say the east coast of the United States and the western Atlantic. TRG tornado. I saw this threat for the last 5 days, but I will say that I thought today would not happen with the morning observations. Oh, yeah. There were a lot of folks who were kind of on the low end with today's event, but as soon as I looked at water vapor when I first woke up this morning, and I saw this bad boy just swooping, literally hitting the nos, look at that, and then you can kind of see right there, perfectly time it through. You can watch this mid-level sector right there blasting through, and they meet up just in time. Bam, right there, just in time. There's your little area of contention. It just happened to unfold. That's why you had that really thin, elongated, stretched out area of precip activity. Definitely a solid wind maker. Convective winds were going to be the number one threat with this for sure, especially with that line wave pattern that we had that formed up almost west to east perfectly through Pennsylvania, and they were moving fast. They had really good forward momentum with them, so honestly, there was no way to keep those, whatever you want to call them, multi-cell, supercell, whatever you want to use to classify them. That's another thing, too, is you have to take into account the different levels of environmental and steering flow. Environmental flow, steering flow, storm relative motion are all going to play different variables on how an updraft forms, how much it tilts, how aggressive it can try to rotate, how vigorous it'll make it into the upper levels. And because of the fact that we had such rapid storm motion, even at its base, there was just no hope for this thing to really organize and form that elongated, stretched out look of vorticity that would drop a tornado. So, I mean, that's good news, but because we're moving so fast, all that energy has to be displaced somewhere, and that's usually going to be in the form of winds. That's another reason at least I think we did. I know I saw that there was a warning out there. Oh yeah, there's an active warning right now for 1.5-inch hail, and that makes sense because that's going to rapidly accelerate up to the freezing level where that wet bulb zero height is, glaciate over, and with that kind of collision that's going on, it'll freeze fast and then hit that downdraft and come barreling down towards the surface. So wonderful setup for wind and hail, not very tornadic. We're going to explore the tornadic threat over the Great Plains. Are we going to talk about the hurricane season? If not, when? We're probably not going to touch on it too much tonight, Braden's WC. Right now, we're still kind of in a holding pattern. We know what's happening with the hurricane season, and there's really no sense in beating a dead horse. We had talked in our last live stream, I believe it was either Wednesday or Thursday, the group and I, we mentioned that back in November, December, we had mentioned in April of this coming year, that's the make or break point. If we start to see El Nino really falling apart by April 2024 and especially into May, we're essentially locked in. We know what's going to happen. And the fact that El Nino is just falling apart at the seam right now tells us everything we need to know, more or less. And now it's time to really dig in and kind of build our final consensus, because between now and June 1st, there's not going to be a whole lot of other changes out there. El Nino's falling apart. That was the big caveat. Now it's just a matter of, are our waters going to stay as hot as they are? When is Africa going to become a blaze? And so on and so forth. And finally, reefs and runways. So sick and tired of the hype crowd rant away, brother. I'm so thankful that not only are you giving me the privilege of being able to rant to you guys in a professional manner, because I think that's part of the reason why so many folks have bad, severe weather anxiety. Even huge authority figures in meteorology immediately love to just jump on that tornado or catastrophic event train, and you gotta build the momentum. You gotta break the ice to the audience appropriately. This is going to be a very crude example of it, but whenever you meet a girl at the bar or vice versa, ladies, if you're ever out for a drink, out to dinner with your homegirls, homeboys, however you want to describe it, the first thing you do when you walk up to somebody, at least most of the time, I can testify to this, you don't walk up to somebody and immediately go, Yeah, so I'm going to marry you, blah, 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 blah. And I'm using this terminology because I'm not going to cuss and I'm not going to use innuendo on the stream. So I'm using some what might sound as weird examples, but you know what I mean. You're not going to go for third, if not home base, upon first interaction. You're going to ease into it. You're going to nudge the ball. You're going to bunt it, get to first base. You're going to steal second. You're going to haul butt to third, and then you're going to sprint for the finish. And that's kind of the same thing. If we see severe weather threats coming on the horizon, the best way to introduce it to your audience is to just ease into it. We're investigating, folks. It's good to see you. It looks like we could have some bad weather on the horizon, and we're digging into it really closely, and we'll have more updates as we go over the next couple of days. And then once things finally start to look a little bit more elaborate, then you can say, okay, so these areas are more likely to be susceptible to these kind of threats, and then bring it full circle. We're monitoring closely, and we will continue to keep you updated every step of the way, hour by hour, minute by minute, etc., however you provide your coverage. You know, it's that good meteorological bedside manner is how I like to call it. So this was the depiction that they had today for WPW Storm Prediction Center for Pennsylvania and Ohio. Ohio is not really unfolding. Ohio has been a rather bit of a dead stick. They really haven't seen too much in Ohio outside of the very easternmost border of Ohio to Pennsylvania. A lot of the stronger stuff seemed to cut off at about the same longitude angle as Pittsburgh. So from there to the east, we've had systems that just continue to scream through, and it's insane that they have the flash flood warnings on these systems as well, because as fast as they're moving, I had a bad feeling they'd be dumping torrential rains. It's been a consistent issue with all these storms is the flash flooding. The flash flooding has been immense with these puppies. So I feel bad for saying this, but there were a lot of sources out there who were kind of dropping this almost completely, but this, I can give it a giant check mark, did verify. They formed up pretty spectacularly and moved off in this kind of fashion, and they're going to wash out as soon as they try to get out of Pennsylvania, move into Maryland, Delaware, etc. And then this is what we have for tomorrow. This is what I was talking about earlier. So the expansive area through here, you know, I'll let it slide. That's the level 1 threat. And the level 2, it makes sense because we're probably going to get that sporadic, isolated pop-off stuff away from our major source regions. This, I'd probably move a little bit further to the north, just based on what Weather Prediction Center has here and based off of what I'm seeing in some of our analysis products. The only thing that this right here, 0Z Tuesday, as we get into Tuesday morning, that could change things. Because what I'm looking at here is going to be this. Let me clear the ink some so you guys can see a little bit better. I'm looking at our parent low here, and I'm looking at the triple point. And the reason the triple point is very important is because you have your jet overrunning that setup right there. When that purple front pops off and you have your occluded system, that feature is no longer your parent. I mean, it is the parent low for all intents and purposes. It's what spawned your synoptic chain, if you will. But we're starting to lose intensity. And notice how it's almost getting entrenched within that secondary boundary that's upstream coming out of British Columbia and Alberta. So that's going to be cut off very soon. And that's probably why at 18Z and then eventually 0Z, you can see it frontalicizing, it's washing out, and then boom, we have our new parent system that's going to reinvigorate our warm sector. And so this I definitely agree with. We're going to have some good dry line activity, that's for certain. And you can see it plain as day stacking all the way up to 850, 700 millibars. So the lift there is definitely good to go. Our dew points, relative humidity, the precipitable water is all there. We have the good moisture component. Now, my thing is, I don't know about the following threat. Let's go back. I don't know about this. This here, I know that the valid time will go until early Wednesday and will encompass the first half of Tuesday, but I don't know about this. This is very expansive, and I think a large majority of our stuff is going to happen here and through here, and then this is going to translate off in this general fashion. We might get some bleed over into the Midwestern states, the rest of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, because they just can't seem to catch a break. But I don't know if it's going to be as full-on, expansive as they have depicted here, but we'll see. It remains to be seen. I've also had a very busy weekend, so I haven't been immersed, in the weather atmosphere, no pun intended, as much as I should be. Yeah, see, even here, at 0Z on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Tuesday, I'd be looking for our most significant stuff right in through here. right there, because you have all that really good vorticity attached to your triple point, where we could possibly see triple point cyclogenesis as we go through, and there it is, as we wander through Thursday and then eventually Friday. And then we also have our jet screaming atop overhead, so all of our good shortwave activity is going to move up in this sort of a fashion. So if anything, I'd sort of shrink that day 3 threat to somewhere up and through here. I'm not too sure we're going to have as much widespread severe thunderstorm activity, that is, down through here. We'll probably get some of those good old-fashioned special weather statements. We'll probably see some flash flooding depending on how pronounced these thunderstorms hold together as we go through the overnight hours. Because that's another thing, too. As we go through the overnight hours, we have that adiabatic cooling provider, that latent heat exchange, the adiabatic cooling brought on by the rainfall and the precipitation that's hitting the ground. That's going to help to create a little bit of increasing stability. We're losing daytime heating, so that's also going to help to create that inverted sounding in our skew-Ts. So I think the southern mode, as a lot of folks would like to call it, is probably going to shut down as we go into that nocturnal phase. Then up through here, where we have our inactive boundary on the north side, and then our triple point and our occluded front with the warm front kind of moving in, getting pulled back into that low pressure. That's what's going to continue to create that mechanical lift, or that forced convection overnight and into the next day. But we shall see. Let's go ahead and start taking a look at some of the parameters. So this is where we sit now. We're starting to see that really good moist tongue forming up across the plains. And the more we can see this, notice this kink right here. That was pivotal in today's severe weather setup. You have this long area of moist advection that's moving up through the mid-levels at 850 millibars, and that's what helped to spark our area of thunderstorm activity today. We had something come in like this and scraped right across it, scoop, and that's what popped that wonderful definitive line off on radar in such rapid fashion as well. If I were to extrapolate this forward, notice how we have northwesterly winds all through this area. That's going to help to bump this warm sector, this warm moist sector, down to the south. So this time tomorrow, this will probably be more representative of where it'll be down in this very poorly doodle-bob looking drawn appendage there. So that's what I think is going to help to ignite our activity on the mid-Atlantic coast through Virginia and North Carolina, and then further back into the Ohio, Mississippi valleys is where we're going to see a little bit more of that ignition along that very, very slow-moving stable wave / cold frontal boundary. You come over to our Theta E, you can see it even better in Theta E. We're setting the stage for the Great Plains. Look at all this wonderful instability and maritime tropical air trying to get up into the Great Plains as much as they can. It looks like we have a little bit of a warm front already trying to establish itself, because there's a call in the winds, and I'll switch the color so you guys can see it. But there's your southerly flow, there's your northerly flow, and then there's your call right there. So there's your front. There's some front activity there. There's something pulling back into our low here. And then we have this getting ready to swoop out of the desert southwest and nudge it off towards the east. So that's why I do think that up in this quadrant, we're going to get some activity. Down in this quadrant, we're going to get this activity. And then you can see the northerly winds here getting ready to butt right up against this weak sector out here. So we're going to get activity down and through here as well. All happening more or less at the same time, the hottest part of the day, max heating of the day. What is that? Let me go ahead and spell that out. Max heating of the day, MHD, or MHOD. Got to do it. That sounds like a different System of a Down song. Let's see. Well, we got a lot of chat. Excuse me. I've been skipping out on you guys. I apologize. Cold Gype Tropics tonight. We might get into the tropics towards the back end of this stream. We shall see. How close are we? Hello. Can't stay long. Working on a project. Dinner break. I appreciate you tuning in nonetheless. Hello. How close are we? Glad to see you watching Azari. He's the best in the business here on YouTube. TRG Tornado. Thank you very much for that. Sincerely appreciated, buddy. Thank you very much as well for the support and tuning in this evening to talk with us. David, are you still doing the weather podcast? Would love to hear you. Thank you for reminding me, Kevin, because that, to tell you the truth, fell off my radar. That's all I grimace, because I definitely did not mean to forget about that. But you know what? I definitely need to put that back on my to-do list, because I have not forgotten. I definitely want to. So, yeah, I appreciate that, Kevin, for dropping the little fun fact. Let's see. Kevin Howdy from Tallahassee, thank you very much for joining me. Let's see. Willow, not right now. PM, welcome in. Thank you very much for joining. All right, let's see. Let's keep moving on. Let's move along. So now as we go through our analyzed theta E, we got to go ahead and initialize it. And if you look at where our wrap is for 21Z, it seems to be right on the mark-ish, sort of. It looks like it's kind of overestimating a little bit of our theta values up into the northeast and through the Midwest. But all in all, you know, you got it. It's definitely there. And see, take a look at these early panels, these early timestamps, and I'll go ahead and draw a box so you guys can look with me. Watch right in through this sector here. Watch this little weak vorticity spin up there, or this little weak cyclone spin up right where my L is drawn, right there. Right there. And I know the wind barbs don't entirely identify it, but look at this little wave. That's why we like to call them waves in synoptic meteorology. You see one feature back up in through here, and then you have a wave along the boundary there. And that's also what's going to help to kind of create a little bit of that scattered, or I should say isolated chaos right along this channel of instability there. And the surface-based CAPE does a phenomenal job of identifying that. And if you look, this is early in the day on Monday, so this is before max heating of the day. And then as max heating gets going, right about here, we'll stop at 21Z. This is shortly thereafter the hottest part of the day. This is when we're getting ready to start that downward descent. This is why I'm thinking what I'm thinking. So right here, and I should probably use a different ink, right there, right up in through here, and then definitely down in through here, for sure. And then obviously if I'm not circling an area, that does not mean we're not going to have bleed over, because Mother Nature does what Mother Nature wants to do. For all we know, it could ignite all along this boundary, but I don't quite think that's what's going to happen. Mainly because we still have some decent cross barrier flow that's going to help to dry out the mid to low levels in certain areas of the front range of the Rockies pushing into the Central Plain. So I think closest to our parent low right there, and in close proximity to this puppy, is where a lot of our significant activity is going to go. Bonafide dry line moving out of West Texas into the interior part of the state. Really good confluent flow along that boundary as well. So we're going to see some pretty good rapid initiation there. And then along that stable wave / unstable wave, if you want to call it that, is where we're going to see more ignition. So if it were me, let's go back to that Storm Prediction Center chart. We'll go back to day 2 tomorrow. I would honestly leave the enhanced. Well, like I said, I'd probably draw a little bit more of that enhanced up here, just a little bit. This I'm on board with. I'd probably extend this green out just a little bit more. And that's all I would do. I would extend the green out a little bit further into the Appalachians, the Ohio, Mississippi Valley. And then I'd probably shrink this area some. But then again, I know I have to go with the valid times for these charts as well. We're not looking at just the increments of max heating, the afternoon, early evening, etc. This is an all-encompassing chart or time frame. So I got to give it a little bit more credit than that. All right, moving right along. This is going to be our dew points, good old dew points. Now we're looking at 850. And the reason we're looking at 850 is because I want to see just how saturated our column is. Because you can have really good, robust dew points in the low levels, but if you get a little bit too much of that mid to upper level drying, then your thunderstorms are not going to realize their full potential, because you're going to have more dense air above it than down below it. And as a result, you're not going to get as potent of an updraft shooting up. That's why you want really good dew points and relative humidity down close to the surface, and you want to supplement that in the mid-levels. Now, a little bit of dry air between 850 and 700, more so a little bit above 850, is not going to be detrimental to your updraft, because you're only getting more momentum pushed in that horizontal vector. Once you have enough energy to get that through the vertical, anything that's interjected in that horizontal plane is going to be pulled up with it. And that's what helps to create even stronger downdrafts, create that different temperential. I was going to combine words. That differential heating inside of your thunderstorms, and that's what helps with the hail, the thunder and lightning, and of course the tornadoes. So if you look, I think 850 does a fantastic job of showing us where most of our bad stuff could possibly happen. Notice that we have really good dew points all through this area here. Phenomenal mid-level dew points wrapping back into the center of circulation of our low. Down here where our dry line is most robust, we have a nice pocket of mid-level dew points. And then check this out. Really good 850 dew points just spanning back west to east right up to the mid-Atlantic coastline, with a random appendage hanging out over Florida, even though nothing's happening down here. So that's very interesting. I think 850 shows and tells the full story. And then even as you go further in time, notice that you keep a lot of that really good mid-level moisture moving through the Great Lakes up into the Midwest. So that's why I think that we could shrink that day 3, going to be soon day 2 threat just a little bit. We'll probably have some more moderate level stuff down further to the south. And it's also very, very evident in our wind flow. Notice at 850 as well, we have powerful northwest winds just kicking down along the base of that system. But then down here, we become a little bit more stagnant. The wind arrow or the arrows, they get a little smaller. We still have a really good gradient, but that lift is not going to be what it was the day before at this point. This is 0Z Wednesday now. And then I'm looking at, believe it or not, this is 700 millibar vorticity, because 500 millibars is going to be upper levels. 850, you more or less just want to look for your moisture and your low-level jet to spin storms. So we're going to stop right along the cusp of going from mid-levels to upper levels. And this chart, again, does a fantastic job of showing us where a lot of our really good stretch in the atmosphere is going to be occurring. And it's right around the center of the low. Right around the center of the low, right through there. Still get some good stuff down here, but that's why I think this is going to be more of a dry line setup down here. Dry line is going to get things going down in the south, and then as we go overnight, notice this is 12Z Tuesday morning. So this is 8 a.m. over here on the East Coast, 7 a.m. for these folks out there in the northern central plains, and that's where a lot of our nocturnal activity is going to continue to move through, and it could continue to spill back into the Midwest, the Great Lakes, depending on what we look like at this point down in the mid to low levels, because it looks like everything is just getting completely pulled apart like an accordion at this point. So it's not going to be as definitive. Look at that little face right there. Does anybody else see that? That looks weird. Looks like a goofy looking face staring at us over, what is that? Michigan. The Michigan Peninsula. Does anybody else see that? When I'm seeing that big old gaping smile and then the 2 eyes, that's a little spooky. Looks like a weird anomaly in the chart. I wish I could zoom in on that. Can I? We're going to have a silly moment here on the channel really fast, because I want to see that. I want to zoom in on it. Oh, where was it? Dang it. No. Where was it? There it goes. All right. Now don't mess it up this time. New. There we go. Oh, that looks so weird. And I know we're just dorking up right now. Let me see. Can I zoom? How much can I zoom? All right, there's got to be something I could do to go faster than that. I need to stop being a relic. Look at that weird thing. It almost looks like Mr. Krabs. That's strange. You got eye, and then big old gaping smile. That's so weird. All right, anyways, I'm sorry. We're gonna keep moving. We're gonna keep moving. Now, we're looking at our RRFS. This is our simulated radar, and I also shared this on my TikTok earlier because a lot of our models, the FV3, which is a higher resolution model that it goes into our GFS data, we have the HRRR as well, and then we have the RRFs. And notice that the RRFs actually has way more activity going on into Nebraska and South Dakota. And look at this good area of discrete activity right along that boundary from here through there. And this has been echoed on a few different model runs. And then finally, you notice into day 3 / almost day 2, that's when we get a little bit more of that over. See that? Corroborates excellently with that little bit of 700 millibar analysis we just did on the previous charts using the NAM nest. This is a different model. This is the RRFs now. But notice as you go through the overnight hours, this is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then there's 1 p.m. Finally, notice a lot of our stuff is still back up in through here, and that southern mode is almost shut down. There's really nothing going on. And even then, looks like into Wednesday, we could finally get a little bit of an appendage down through the Midwest, but that's going to be residual stuff, so we'll have to do a little bit more interrogation as to how strong that would be. And just like back on that previous chart I was showing you guys here with that very, very elongated look at the tail end of the run, that's why our RRFs even is showing that there's not going to be a heck of a lot of stuff going on at this point, because everything is just being stretched out. Everything is definitely being stretched out. By the way, pardon me, guys. I know it's Sunday, not Friday. We used to have that trademark Friday night hype, but I'm having a little on the stream tonight, because why not, before another busy week. Here's our RRFS dew points, everybody's favorites, the dew points. And see, right there, you can see where our dew points kind of extend off in this direction. And that goes to show that there's a little bit of air mass modification occurring from a west to east angle through the Ohio-Mississippi valleys out to the Midwest. I promise I haven't had too much to drink just yet. Out to the mid-Atlantic. And then there's our little bit of our thickness or our temperature ridge headed back to our parent low while the rest of it gets going across the Midwest. Oh my God. I almost said the Middle East. Across the Great Plains. Then finally, right there, boom, you can see that dry line really skirting out of the desert southwest, and that's what's going to really help to kick things off. So this area here, this area up and through here, and then this area there, once again, corroborated by our dew point temps. And if we switch over to relative humidity, you can see it again plain as day. Relative humidity looks fairly good, and then as you get into max heating of the day and then overnight into Tuesday, see where our remnant area of greatest RH values are still up near our parent vortex. So that's why I do think overnight Tuesday and then through the day on Tuesday, our threats are going to lift far further to the north than what our Storm Prediction Center, wow, what is happening right now? Than our Storm Prediction Center charts highlight. So that's why for day 2, I would switch this up a little bit. I would nix this portion, put a giant X through it, and I would take this segment and I would put it just a little bit higher. Again, famous last words, give it a little nudge to the north. I do think that's what we want to do. But, you know, all in all, we still have the big picture here. It's not like we're missing too much. I just want to make sure that other areas are communicated the proper threats associated with this. Because right now what this is telling me is the Dakotas, Wisconsin and Minnesota, Michigan, they're just going to see generalized thunderstorms, if that. And I think that's why we should probably have at least our level 1 risk expanded just a little bit further to the north there. I'll even use green for the sake of it. I would do something like this. There you go. That's the only bit I would change. And then I'll go ahead and draw it in. Let me use black, nix this, and get rid of that. That's what I would change. And then maybe take a little bit of this yellow up and match it with where the end of our level 1 risk is, like so. There we go. Those are the adjustments that I would made, for sure, for Tuesday and into early Wednesday. Let's see, where were we? Here's our Roof's Cape, and the Cape, once again, does a fan. Look at that, right there. Max heating of the day as we get ready to get towards the hottest part of the day. We get really good daytime heating. This would be max heating of the day right there, guys. Just again, for those of you who may get confused with the hottest part of the day and max heating of the day. Notice it's in action, heating, not maximum heat of the day, max heating of the day. So as you get the sun to come up right there where you see boom, boom, going forward, that's your maximum heating of the day. This is your hottest part of the day, and then notice your cape starts to slowly peter off after that, and then until it disappears. And then notice here again, as you go through Tuesday, overnight Tuesday, into the day on Tuesday, that cape does stay wrapped up in our low vortex. And that's another reason why I want us to watch where this low moves, because the last few major storm systems that we've had tracking through, all of our models missed the mark in terms of our lows track at the last second, because that lows track, you can put a safe bet you're going to have severe weather in close proximity to it. You don't even have to, you could draw the Storm Prediction Center chart with your eyes closed. If you have an open gulf like so, you got really good mixing on either side of this system, established conveyor belts, then right here, boom, severe weather, one way or another. Maybe not so much on the north and west side of the low, but on that northeast and then east-southeast is where you're going to see stuff. So just track that off, and there's going to be severe weather in close proximity to it regardless. It's a solid rule of thumb, and it almost never fails. Almost never fails. So we'll really need to see what happens here, because there is still a bit of discontinuity between our model runs. I know this is Cape, but you could more or less kind of watch where the low tracks, and this model thinks it's going to follow a path like this, almost due east, through the Central Plains into the lower Great Lakes. If this wobbles like this, or if this does move a little bit further to the east, due east, at a more 90-degree angle, that's going to change everything. If we take this more northern path, then that enhanced area that's here is definitely going to lift. And we're going to see it much closer to where that low tracks and where the triple point establishes itself. As a matter of fact, let me try to do something for you guys. Let's go back to, we'll just use this blank chart for lack of better canvas. So let's go ahead and draw some doodling here. Boom, boom, boom. So there's your parent low. There's your triple point. This is your warm front. And then this is your cold front. And I'll go ahead and break it into blocks. Split that in half. Draw a circle around this. And then draw like an X there. And the reason I did this is because this is going to be your active cold front. I'll put an A here. This is going to be your inactive cold front. This is obviously your warm front. This is your parent low. I'll go PL, and then there's your triple point, TP. TP. So the parent low at this point in the life cycle is not going to do too much for you. It's back in the cold air. It's more than likely becoming barotropic at this point and having the cold air wrap around all sides of it. That's why you have your occluded front. Your warm front, you still have really good southerly flow out of the south, pushing that thing to the north. And your active front is going to lose a lot of its stimulation as this triple point and our low, both our lows at this point, because who's to say we won't get a center of circular or a triple point low. As this stuff pulls further and further away, this is going to become weaker and weaker and weaker. It's going to start out moving fast and then slow down, and then finally it's going to be far enough for them to let low that it's going to just close up and modify, and we're going to lose it. So that's why the inactive front, I'll draw two arrows here, has a lot more intensity around it. And the reason that the triple point is important, if I could turn this from a two-dimensional view to a three-dimensional view, if you think about it, your warm front is a very shallow area of warm air, and it'll stack ahead of it. So it's going to have that forward lean as opposed to that backward stack. Your cold front's going to be far more steep because of the fact that it's cold air getting pushed in, and it's trying to lift the warm air out in front of it. The active front that's further to the south is going to lose that really good momentum, and it's going to become from steep, it's going to become more shallow, more shallow, more shallow, more shallow, until finally there's just no more temperature advection because we're too far from the low that's spinning it around. But the triple point is important because that's where your jet stream is. If we switch over to Weather Prediction Center, and we'll stop right there. No, actually, you know what? We'll go right here. We'll go here. And notice that the low is back over Nebraska and South Dakota, and this is at 0Z on Wednesday. We'll go ahead and we'll come on over to Tropical Tidbits since I have this thing open willy-nilly and we're not using it just yet. And we'll use the same exact time here. Let's go forward in time, and there's 0Z Wednesday. So see, perfect example right here. There's your parent low that's back here on WPC's chart. I lost it. There. See that? So placement of low is close, very close. Then we come back over to Tropical Tidbits, but notice where your jet is. You see how your jet is out in front of it? Look at this wonderful diffluence right there. Excellent diffluence. And so what that tells me is, even though your parent low is here, stacking back into that cold air, it's the triple point that has all your really, really good vertical velocities, that exchange of mass, if you think about it from a physics standpoint. If you have rising air and diffluent flow in the upper levels, the air splitting apart, as that mass is differentiated and spread out to either side, you're going to need to increase your lift to fill it back in. Remember, everything wants to be in equilibrium, but all these different features in the atmosphere prevent it from doing so, and that's why we have lift, we have sinking, we have thunderstorms, we have clear skies. All this turbulent mixing is because the atmosphere has no idea how to create a level of equilibrium to where there's no weather at all. It's impossible. That goes back to different things like the moon, the sun, Earth's tilt, the seasons. Those are very, very generic pieces that can go slowly narrowed down into it. But anyways, to tie it all up into a bundle, that is where your greatest vorticity is, not your low center. So you want to watch that triple point closely, because right here is where you're more than likely more susceptible to that severe weather activity, just looking at an upper level slice of the atmosphere. And so for those of you who are still following along, despite my very, very long-winded tirade of nerd jargon, that's why it's crucial we track where this low heads. And see, this is the Rufus model, the RRFS, in comparison to the GFS, and it looks like the GFS wants to take its time bumping it to the north, whereas the Rufus model, the RRFS, where did it go? Has it moving a bit further to the north, a little bit faster. And you could actually almost make a case that you could find your triple point even using your precipitable water. Isn't that amazing? Because there's your low, there's your occlusion right there, and then here's your triple point somewhere in this general area. So there's where your severe weather is more than likely going to be going on, somewhere right in through here. Because if you think about it as almost in a vacuum perspective, if you have the low being pulled out like this, getting pulled back into your cold air. Remember what I said from a vertical perspective where the rising air spreading out needs to fill more mass in, create more vorticity? If you look back at it in a horizontal perspective, if your low is pulling back this way, then that means that the warm and the cold front need to activate to fill that area of void in, and as such, you're going to increase your surface confluence, which is only going to increase your vertical upward motion. So that's why closest to that intersection is where you get a lot of that really intense stuff. There's a very common misconception that along the cold front, you're going to have strong stuff always. And, you can. You can at certain points of the year. We're not quite there yet. And also what's dinging us is the fact that we just had a front come through here. Look at how all our precipitable water values just dissipate over the southeast. And we have this narrow corridor of really boisterous precipitable water values. Again, we're looking at PWatt. We're looking at that specific data, but you can still infer by way the atmosphere works that we have modifying air out here over the southeast and mid-Atlantic, minus this little drapery effect that's going on between two air masses. This is going to be your most buoyant, turbulent, modified air, however you want to describe it. And we can go back to our theta E model to show this a little bit better. Or actually, we'll go back to our analyzed theta E. So see, check this out. Here is your return flow. This is your bona fide return flow right in through there, trying to modify into the central and the central and southern plains. This is our modified continental polar air that's moving into maritime tropical air. That's why the theta values drop off so substantially. And then even as you go through max heating of the day, let's go towards 21Z right there, the hottest part of the day. See how we only have this corridor of higher theta E values here, but then everything is cooler, weaker down across the east coast of the U.S. It's because we have that modifying high pressure that kept things really dry, really clear for us down here in the southeast. It was phenomenal weather today. A little on the hot side, but lots of dry air down there because of that modifying air mass. So this is going to be your most boisterous area for that thunderstorm activity. If you take it through time using our wrap, pardon me, wow, I apologize for that, shoot. That's why our southern portion of the front is going to lose luster. It's going to lose its momentum as it tracks further off towards the south. And then the low itself, notice where the winds change. So we have northwest, 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 and then they become a little bit more due north, like so. So these three blips here, I'll go ahead and mark them. 1, 2, 3. That's going to be in direct association with your low. There's your inactive front. This is eventually just going to start to modify out, and it's not going to go anywhere. And then here's your warm front. There's your triple point, occluded front. There's your warm front. So your greatest risk for severe weather activity is going to be up there. And that's all she wrote, folks. That's just about it. Here's a look at our 850 millibar winds. So the shear component is there, and even 850 does an outstanding job of showing us where our greatest severe potential could possibly be. This is our 3-kilometer NAM, and the 850 millibar winds right here do an excellent job of showing why it is I keep thinking that our enhanced risk should go from here to just a little bit further to the north. Just a little bit further to the north, because if you think about it, there's multiple reasons why your winds accelerate. Number one, pressure gradient. If you have high pressure versus low pressure and one of them is getting stronger or the other is getting weaker, then that gradient in between is going to fluctuate. This could be weakening while this strengthens or vice versa. That funneling effect between the two is going to get stronger. Number two, Conservation of angular momentum, which is just obviously different motions in terms of the physical plane of the Earth. Like the subtropical jet is more so just an angular momentum type feature with little temperature discontinuity. So a lot of it is more so just general physics that create our STJ. And then finally, as I've already implied, number 3 is temperature discontinuity. So it's safe to say if we have this very, very strong corridor of winds, then we probably have colder air on this side and warmer air on this side. And as a result, we're getting that acceleration of the winds. That's why it's called a low-level jet. It's no different than a polar front, Arctic jet, etc. It's just more so north to south than it is west to east, like our regular jets. Our regular jets can do that because we always have cold air up north. Depending on the time of year, it may be cooler air versus frigid air, but you know what I mean. And then down towards the equator, we have the warmer air all the time, so that's why you get the jet stream. So I think that level of intensity is not only going to be confined to down here, it's going to extend a little bit further to the north. We could see some more moderate to strong stuff up there, but we'll probably continue to see this stuff wandering around and changing at the last second like it always does. Now let's go ahead and look at the long range before we wrap up the live stream. So we'll go back to we'll use the 18Z GFS, make sure you guys can see, and we'll scroll through time. Oh, whoops, let me go back in time because that already kind of like defeated our storm system. So there's our puppy right there getting ready to go. And even the GFS, if you notice, look at that right front quadrant. I know we typically use that for our tropical cyclones, but northeast side of it is going to be loaded up and ready to rock and roll. There's your thickness ridge. So this general area here is going to be the most ripe area to contact. I don't know why I said contact. Contend with the differing air masses on either side and create that illustrious threat for some severe weather. And then let's look at the big picture as we go along. So that bad boy moves in, moves out. We get this nice little push of cold air, and this is going to keep changing. That's why I don't understand. So many viewers out there get upset at us YouTuber folks. You know, some are more official than others. I get it. There's a lot of big names on YouTube as well, but I'm just saying YouTube in general, weather folks, anybody who puts out on YouTube, people get upset about talking long range, talking mid range, talking hype. But I've been looking at my X recently, and there's a lot of people, big meteorologists, who, like, let's go back in time. Let's go back to 12Z on Thursday, and I will fast forward. You see this right there? There's a lot of folks that have been hyping this big old push of cold air, and then you come back to this point in time, totally different. Totally different. And I don't get it. Nobody bats an eye. But here on YouTube, God forbid, if we were to say that, we'd have the masses coming after us with pitchforks and torches. I don't know why some of the big name Mets out there, especially on the old tweeter, the X, still want to keep holding. And that's another thing, too. It's the middle of April, and people are still out here saying, winter hasn't left yet. What are you smoking? Pardon me, but, like, what do you mean winter is not done yet? Can you just let it go? Can you just let it go? By the way, I thought there was a very pivotal tweet I saw today, or not a tweet, but a Facebook post by Dennis Phillips. He's down here in Florida as well, another reputable, long-time meteorologist. He shared on Facebook, "Love bugs have arrived," and I fully agree with this statement, but he said, "Love bugs have arrived. Next stop, hurricane season." That is textbook for Florida. Usually April and May, we have all sorts of just terrible, terrible love bug activity. And then finally, we're rolling in to the good old hurricane season. So that's what's kind of on the horizon right now. It does seem like we're going to get a small, brief break. We're still going to have, some severe weather activity out there because, it's just the name of the game. You get that high pressure off the East Coast spinning the modified air back up. These weaker frontal boundaries are going to keep coming down. And if you guys remember older live streams of mine, I had mentioned that we're going to go from winter time to where it's stupid cold air hitting warmer air. Now it's going to be really hot air and just a little bit of cool air to ignite stuff and get things going. So all these weaker frontal boundaries coming down are enough to get really good severe weather going. And obviously we're in the very, very back end of the GFS here. So take it with that massive good old grain of salt like they always say. So to be determined. And then for the sake of shoots and giggles, we'll take a look at our sea surface analysis. El Nino is doing its best to fight tooth and nail against La Nina, but she's still trying to take hold. The 3.4 is officially in a very, very weakened state. We're barely holding on to El Nino, that's for sure. The 1 and 2 is still in a cool neutral. The 4 is climbing back up. 4 is back out here. So it looks like those warm anomalies are converging and trying to warm up again. And then the 3 is right on the cusp of falling apart too. So El Nino is definitely in a very, very broken state right now. Very, very broken state. So yeah, that's about it. There's our 7-day change. You can see that cool anomalies are still spreading across the equatorial Pacific. PDO is still in a negative state. In fact, the the northwest portion of the Pacific is still warming, intensifying that negative PDO. Our our Atlantic meridional mode is still in effect, and in fact could get a little bit worse considering that it looks like our subtropics and our mid-Atlantic or mid-latitudes are still kind of cool and cooling. But we will have to see exactly what happens. Here's a look at the North Atlantic in general. Goes without saying, everything is still really, really blistering hot out there. Whoa, Carmen, you're back! I was thinking about you the other day. I forget what day it was specifically, but I thought to myself, Carmen has not been in any of our live streams in what feels like months now. Hopefully she comes back just in time for the hurricane season, and there she is. I manifested it by thinking about it. Welcome in. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I hate to say it, but unfortunately, we are getting ready to conclude the evening. By the way, thank you very much for the generous donations tonight. I can't believe we have $34.99 worth of chat revenue. That is a beautiful thing. It's going to go right back into the channel as it always does. And yeah, we will probably see you guys again tomorrow, pending what's going on over here at the home front. If not, for certain on Tuesday, so we can do a bit of a hot wash as to what happened with everything that's going on across the plains, what happens out over the Ohio, Mississippi, and mid-Atlantic areas, and so on. But alrighty, guys. That ought to do it. That'll do the trick. You have all been a wonderful audience. Wizard of Boz, why do they pick 850? What altitude does that work out to? I'd imagine it changes based on temp. So 850 is like the optimal height above ground level, but not too high in the atmosphere, to really get an idea of where, how do I put this without using all the sciencey jargon? It's like a pivotal point in the atmosphere. You have your low-level dynamics that will get things going, and then you have your upper-level dynamics that will help to further fuel what happens in the low levels, but your 850 to 700, the mid-levels, need to be adequately primed, because if not, then that stuff coming up from the low levels is going to go back down, and the upper levels are not going to be able to do anything because your mid-levels are capped. You have that SIN, that convective inhibition. So if your stuff initiates, and we can actually use, where you guys can see my hand here, this is your low levels, this will be the upper levels. So if you have stuff like this trying to come up and it shoots back down, then you're not going to condense your clouds, you're not going to form the updrafts, and the upper levels are just going to keep screaming across west to east. If you have adequate mid-levels, 925, 850, 700, then you're finally going to get pulled in, and you're going to create that level of free convection all the way up to your equilibrium level, which is the tropopause. So that's kind of why 850. I like to look at all of them too. Don't let it misconstrue you. I like to look at 925. I love to look at 850. I love to look at 700. I love to look at 500. There's a reason we have all those atmospheric slices. There's a pivotal reason why we always have them. All right, I hear Willow crying up a storm, so we're going to go ahead and end the chat, guys. And yes, we're definitely thankful to see you back in here, Carmen. You're one of the old faithful followers from way back in the day, and it's always a joy to have you in the chat amongst everybody else. We're getting ready to roll into the rest of severe weather season, as well as the fateful hurricane season, where we're going to have to put up our dukes and bob and weave around storms and whatnot every couple of minutes. So thank you all very much for watching. Thank you for being such a phenomenal audience, as always. And we will touch base with you tomorrow, if not Tuesday for certain, or maybe both days, depending on how opened up my schedule is and how much we can get knocked out during the first and second halves of the day. before we get into the final quarter of the evening and I can do these live streams with you guys. So I hope you've had a phenomenal weekend. I hope the weather has been fairly clear for your neck of the woods, and if it has, that you've gotten out, enjoyed with your loved ones and friends far and wide. And definitely keep a close eye on all of your other weather sources, as many as you can, however many that there are that you typically tune into on a routine basis to get the information you need to stay safe amidst what's going to be happening over the next couple of days through the Great Plains, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, across the Mid-Atlantic. We're in a very weird situation this time, because most of our severe weather events, if you guys think about it, have been narrowed to this grid box. Whereas in this case, we have this grid box, we have this grid box, we have this grid box. Today was a wonderful example of it. Everybody has been hyper alert for Dixie Alley and Tornado Alley, and all of a sudden we had severe thunderstorms in Pennsylvania. So it goes to show we're in a very volatile point right now, so we just need to watch across the spectrum. We have our forecasted regions, we have our highlighted designations on Storm Prediction Center's chart, but because of the volatile nature of the atmosphere and all these different mechanisms that are moving around out there, we have our modifying high over the southeast, we have our system out west, we have those screaming clipper systems coming out of Canada. We just need to watch all over the place because everything's a little scrambled right now, but it's going to be just fine. Everyone's going to come out of this unscathed, and we're well ahead of it, and we kind of are starting to nail down exactly where our criteria and our phenomena is going to unfold. So we'll talk again soon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart, sincerely, for the donations that popped up in the live stream tonight. I can't communicate enough exactly what that means, and I wish there was more that I could do versus simply saying it, because I know everybody can talk a bunch of smack, but to actually exhibit it, that's a totally different story, and Lord willing, if this channel continues to grow, we can finally give back to you guys on a more routine basis. And there's another one, JF, $5 donation. I super appreciate it. We're just biding our time. Lord willing, we can continue to develop our momentum, and eventually I can give back to you guys more than just simply sitting in a chair and briefing you and giving you my 2 cents and ranting and raving about all the weird things I see on a regular basis. Which, by the way, we're about a week away from the annual summit here in Florida, which I'm very excited to go to. I don't know how exactly I want to do it. I don't think they will allow us to go live during the event, but I will probably try to take pictures. I'm going to bring pen and paper so I can take notes, record, and take photos as I can. Hopefully because it's the Emergency Management and Meteorological Summit here in Orlando, the second annual. And I know that Mike's weather page has a panel there, and I'm assuming that there's going to be WFTV, WESH, Channel 13, there's the Fox. There's got to be a lot of different meteorologists out there, and perhaps there will be some folks from National Weather Service, Storm Prediction Center, NHC. We will see. So I'm really looking forward to that day, so I can just, even if you've never heard of me, even if you don't care about military weather, whatever the case may be, I'm just going to shoot myself in there like a freaking shortwave trough and destabilize things and start asking a bunch of questions, start trying to pick the brains of so many different people out there. So really looking forward to that. I'll definitely give you a debrief or an after-action report of that. Maybe even the same day. That same day, it's a Tuesday, so it would line up perfectly with our live streams on here. I can give you guys a breakdown of any bit of the information that I have. I'm going to take one of my infamous notepads with me so I can take down a lot of different information with a lot of the different panels and discussions I'm going to sit in on. And yeah, we'll see. Just going to continue to establish that network and keep reaching out to folks and talking more and more. So stay on the lookout for that, and then shortly thereafter, we'll be rounding the back end of April. I can't believe that already. Today's April 14th, tomorrow's the 15th, and it's going to be May before we know it. I'm not trying to rush it, but May is going to sneak up on us. And then everyone's going to suddenly be scrambling for last-minute hurricane prep. Kevin, again, if you're still there, thank you very much for that reminder of the podcast. I have not forgotten about that. And on top of that, I do want to release that preparedness video. I need to get on the ball with that badly. There's a lot of things I need to get on the ball with, and I just have such a hard time sometimes getting my scatterbrain under control. Braden's WC, I'm going to have to ask you politely to not spam the chat. Please don't copy and paste Where do you see a subtropical storm on April 22nd? Do you see that, Nazario? I saw it reported on one video. One model run. It was an 18Z model run, and I don't agree with it. It's not going to happen, and it's not out there again. We had just gone through our GFS a little while ago, and it's no longer reflected on those charts. If you scroll through, we'll go to the 22nd there. Just another frontal system. Just another frontal system. There's nothing out there. There was an 18Z model run that had a little weak El Nino wave that formed up in the Gulf and collided with Florida. And of course, so anyway, I just started blasting. Everyone started to pop out subtropical storm, tropical storm Vince, and you know, it's creating uproar, and that's what I'm afraid of for this hurricane season. But I hate to end the stream so abruptly, but I'm seeing the clock ticking. I started late tonight, so we're ending a little bit later, but thank you all very much for watching. Thank you so sincerely for the $40 worth of chat revenue tonight. It means the world to me, and it's going to go right back into this channel once Google and YouTube AdSense pays it out to me. That's exactly where I put it. I always put it back into this channel, whether it be ordering more equipment for the cars, ordering more papers and other little note-taking devices that I have, and so on and so forth. So it's going to come right back to you guys. Again, have a great rest of your Sunday evening, folks. Get plenty of rest. We got another new week ahead of us, and time waits for no man and or woman. So we got to stay ahead of the game, keep grinding, keep cranking out as much as we can on a day-to-day, and God bless everybody out there. Stay safe, and again, we will talk to you very soon. And as always, you guys know the drill. Until next time, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.